Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back to episode 50 of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today is February 10th, 2020. That is right. I just said episode 50. We've been doing this thing for 50 episodes, guys.
Whoop, whoop.
I am Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my questionable co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome. Yeah, you heard me.
I don't know. That was a heavy eyebrow raise on my side there.
Giving me the major side eye.
Yes.
I'll let her eyebrow do
eye.
the talking.
Yes.
In tonight's episode, we are doing something a little bit different. No, what am I looking at? Well, we'll still largely be discussing the Cosmere tonight. We're going to be opening up the mailbag and answering the questions that you have been sending us by span read. Email.
That's the sound of a span read for the record.
The thing, yeah. This means that we're going to be talking about everything from the Cosmere to other Brandon books and beyond, which means spoilers. So if you're worried about spoilers, you may want to go read those books that you're worried about, then come back and listen to this episode when you're better prepared. And if you can't wait, then we have other episodes that you should check out too, because we do that. We've got 49 other episodes that you can listen to. Mm-hmm. 40 guys, this is 50. That's kind of cool.
Crazy.
It is. It's very cool.
Crazy.
Do you know what else
that's
is
half
cool?
of 100. What else is cool?
I got my sister to finally start reading Mistborn, and she's now started on Well of Ascension. The hooks are in, folks.
And how do you know this?
She may or may not be bumming my Audible account, because I knew there was no way she was going to buy Well of Ascension on her own.
And that's the exact reason you share Audible accounts with people, is so that you can stalk and see what they're doing, what they're reading. Audible accounts, Netflix accounts, Disney Plus, whatever you want. You just go back and you check the history, and you're like, "Hey,
that's how I know Bill watches Vampire Diaries."
I do not. I
tried that show. I couldn't do it. I do
no.
other lame shows, but I couldn't do that one.
Due to this is how I know Bill watches both Vampire Diaries and
do not.
Dr.
What is it? Dr. McStuffins, I think it is.
It's Doc McStuffins.
I have some friends who have used my Hulu account in the past and have watched a few things. It's fine and amusing. One of them is actually probably listening right now, so you know who you are. For those of you who do listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you that you can actually interact with us, join in live via chat as we record our episodes at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. We record the episodes every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Please join us, take an active part in the show, and just join in the chat. We've got awesome people in the chat room. I'm actually seeing the scroll up, and so if you see me like flicking my gaze to the side, I'm checking chat because chat's awesome and they're just a lot of fun. It really adds to our enjoyment.
If you ever see me making a weird face
experience.
or making a laugh, then that's the same reason for why I'm randomly doing stuff too that seems out of time.
Yep. So basically they're doing whatever they can to distract us, and we're encouraging it because we're anarchists that way.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Now, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is, of course, made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show will, of course, continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, please head over to patreon.com/cosmerestudies. You can pledge a couple bucks per episode. Any amount really helps, and we just really appreciate it because we want to keep making the show longer and better. Longer as in more into the future. We don't need to extend the length of the episodes. But we want to continue to make
the 3-hour episode.
No.
You bought your tickets. You knew what you were getting into.
Jordan, don't chase them off. Our patrons, of course, get immediate access to our Discord channel where you can talk about the show and the Cosmere with other listeners. It's a great community. We've got some awesome discussions. We've just got some fun stuff going on there. So head on over. You will also get early access to bonus episodes, exclusive access to other bonus content, and just, you make us happy. Mm-hmm. And honestly, isn't that what life is about, is making us happy? No, I mean...
And if it makes us happy...
No, we really would love to actually get to know you, and that's the best way to do it is through our Discord channel. So come join. Of course, now this time we want to make a shout-out to... We occasionally like to shout out to our different patrons, and today we are shouting out to Levi M. Thank you so much for being a patron, for being awesome. We really, really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. We like
Arigato.
Mr. Levi. Doesn't rhyme.
What?
She said arigato. I said Mr. Levi.
Levi.
Are you talking to... No. to Levi M. Right. That guy.
Yes.
So yeah, just thank y'all. Y'all are amazing. All right, so should we dive in, or do y'all have anything special you want to say on this, August occasion of episode 50?
I'm impressed at your vocabulary here, using August as an actual adjective.
Adjective?
Oh, yeah.
It can.
It's almost like you have an applicable degree.
Indeed. So, all right, so let's jump into the first one. I'll go ahead and read this one. So this is from Taylor C., actually on our Instagram account. He says, "One thing I love about Brandon Sanderson is that there is a logic in everything. So my question is, why is ADM Ruin's body? It makes sense to me that the mists are the body of preservation because they're pure elemency, but I can't see any relation between ADM and Ruin. Also, was the black smoke they found in the room near the well Ruin's body as well?" So, this one actually has a pretty straightforward answer. Mm-hmm. The way it works, at least on Scadrial, people have speculated about it working this way on other worlds, but we know it's been confirmed that this is how it works on Scadrial, or however you pronounce it, is that each of the shards, their body exists in the 3 different phases of matter. So with preservation, the mists are the gaseous version, the Well of Ascension is the liquid version, and Lerasium, the metal that Elend takes in, which makes him a Mistborn, is the solid version.
Yep. Now,
for Ruin, the black mist that was surrounding the Well of Ascension, that was the gaseous version. The black pool that I believe Rashek talks about in the epigrams in his writing before they get to the Well of Ascension, and it's actually now at the bottom of the pits of Hathsin, is the liquid part of Ruin's body, and then Adium is the solid portion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because it's supposed to represent sort of the spiritual realm, the cognitive realm, and the physical realm. And it actually, if you think about it, kind of makes sense. The gas representing spiritual, because it permeates everything. Mm-hmm. And gas goes everywhere. The liquid is the juncture. It's where people flow through things. And the liquid is where the perpendicularities tend to be at. And then solid being physical is pretty...
Yeah, the shard pools. And then the physical, the metal.
And it would make sense if it works like this on the other planets. Because we've seen, at least with what with 1.5 other shards, we've seen it work this way. Sort of.
And there's been speculation. For example, on Nalthis, I know people have speculated that the Tears of Edgley, the flowers that they use to make the dye, are the physical manifestation. And which would make sense because there's also speculation that since the Tears of Edgley only grow in a very specific place, that might be near the shard pool, sort of like the pits of Hathsin, where Adium congeals into the solid, is near Ruin's perpendicularity, and we see...
Yeah.
But we've seen at least 2 other god metals. So, with Trellium, which we still aren't sure what Trellium is, but we have some good theories that it's something to do with autonomy, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then we're pretty sure we've seen Racium.
Well, and I believe that Brandon has confirmed that shard blades are a god metal as well. Like, that's actually what they're made of.
So they'd be what's Honor's actual name?
Ten of Astium.
Yes, that's what it was.
I believe so.
It would make sense if it was, or at least
he said something about that. I can't remember the exact thing.
It would at least make sense that it's somewhat similar, since they represent a piece of a spren, which is a splinter of honor.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, a mix of honor and cultivation. So if it's not, if it like, I could definitely see it being some sort of amalgam between the two.
Let me see.
Which you don't see until you get Harmonium on Scadrial.
Well, but with Harmonium, at the very minimum, we know it's an even mix, and it's sort of why it's so insane as far as how reactive it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't find the actual word of Brandon on that, so that could be false. So, take that with a grain of salt. That might have just been speculation. So, but
it's about the name of the shard.
No, about the
shard holder.
About them being made of a god metal.
Oh, okay.
But I believe that is the case.
I haven't seen it.
But I'm just saying right now, this is not me stating this as absolute fact. This is me saying
you heard it here, folks. Bill says that it is a god metal.
Don't at me. Anyway, I'm trying to think. Any thoughts on how that might work for some of the other shards?
Oh, goodness.
It's the gas part that's the curious one, because we haven't seen any gas forms outside of Scadrial.
Stormlight.
It could be.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it feels like it's more connected. Yeah, I guess that is kind of.
But we aren't sure what Stormlight really is.
Right. But I'm just saying that it's a very much a potential.
Yeah, I think it's right. I think it's right that it is like the leftover investiture of honor.
And the other thing is that Roshar is just such a it's a broken planet, and so the rules are kind of different there.
But it would make sense to me in that like the mechanics of, say, Allomancy is the fact that you're burning preservation. Like what you're actually doing is borrowing power from preservation. It would make sense to me that Stormlight is the same thing for honor, but it just does it through a different mechanism.
Right.
And thus
you breathe it in versus eating it.
Well, and it's sort of that there is a gaseous one is breaths on Nalthus.
Yeah.
Because those are divinely endowed from endowment.
Do we actually see breasts though?
They make the color, and there's like a tangible a visible difference.
I think we actually see them. I think we actually see them transfer.
Like, because we see the effect at the very minimum, because people sort of lose color.
Right, but they actually breathe them in.
I think there is an actual like color or something that you see, especially because I've seen enough fan art and even on the cover.
Now we can't use the cover as gospel because there's some inconsistencies on the cover.
Yeah, they mix and match, but it's just pretty.
It really is pretty.
It is.
Dan Dos Santos just did an incredible job.
No, I know you don't have to see gas. Doc FG says in chat. I'm a physicist. I definitely know you don't have to see gas. It's just we've seen the other, at least the ones on Scadrial. So I just sort of expected to see
an actual vapor.
Yeah. Or something similar. But it's just one of those. But that's because I'm basing it off of the only one place where we see it, and know what we're looking at.
You're basing off the exception,
and so and it could be completely an exception, and we just don't know it because we already know Scadrial's also sort of weird in the Cosmere because it was a completely made from scratch world.
Yes. Yeah, and so they're actually permeating parts of the planet. Just there's so much of themselves put into it.
And so, could be. It's interesting though that because we don't really see any real shard interactions in Elantris. Like we see some results, but you don't know what you're looking at when you're reading that book.
Well, yeah, especially because with Elantris, they're just such they're this congealed mass that it's not even so much.
Speaking of weird worlds, kind of think about it. It sounds like all the worlds are just weird and none of them are normal.
Yeah,
everything's fine here.
It's actually fine. We're fine. Yes.
How are you? No, but
confused.
Well, yeah, and Thrinity's all sorts of messed up.
Oh yeah.
We don't know what's going on, and let's see.
The only one that's probably somewhat normal is, quote unquote normal, is gonna be
Taldane?
Sandbox. Yes, thank you.
Taldane.
Except that Taldane's missing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean the planet doesn't spin, right?
Yeah, but you can explain that with natural phenomenon.
Right. Phenomenon.
Pulling on science. Phenomena. You started it. Now it's stuck in my head.
It's all right. I don't mind. That's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. All right. So, what do you think? Should we move on?
Yeah.
Or do you have any other final thoughts on that? All right.
Yeah.
Amy, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. So this is from Pam K. Where did we get? Was this
all the rest of these are emails?
Okay. It said, I had a quick question about Warbreaker because something seems a little inconsistent. What heightening does Vivenna have when she first gets her breath from Lemix? In Chapter 14, it explicitly says she has the first heightening. However, the first heightening is 50 breaths, the second heightening has 200 breaths, and the third heightening is somewhere greater, though I don't think I found an exact amount yet. In Chapter 13, one of the mercenaries estimates she has around 500 breaths, enough for the second heightening. So I think it should be that she has the second heightening, not the first. I didn't have a chance to look.
I
looked. Yeah, on the Coppermind, I didn't have time to look in my book, but it says that she has the third. I think it's just that maybe, this is me guessing, that she didn't recognize the effects of the second and third heightenings yet. Like it was too overwhelming, maybe?
See, and for me, I think it might just be a misreading. It's actually, because if you have the third heightening, you've already got the second and first.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says she has the first heightening, which basically means you have the effects of the first heightening.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the second heightening, you still have the first heightening. If you have the third heightening, you still have the first heightening.
And
so I think it was just sort of a misread. It's not saying when she said she has the first heightening, she does, but she also has
the second
more beyond that. So
yeah.
That I think it's just a matter of
the other thing is the fact that the heightenings aren't hard cutoffs; it's a spectrum, which because of light, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that you also have to take in consideration is she's from the royal line, and so she already has some additional
experience
juice in her as well.
Right. Well, because they're descended from
a return.
Yeah, and so it could be true because the third heightening is listed at around 600, I believe. And so it could be that she has 500, but because she's a royal, she gets a little more out of it.
Yeah, that would make sense actually.
I'm gonna look this up.
I'm trying to remember what were so first is you can see the auras.
Yeah, first aura's recognition. Second is perfect pitch.
Yeah.
And then third I think is
color
awakening.
recognition.
I'm just gonna look it up.
That's right. That's perfect color recognition.
Third is color recognition. Yeah.
And I think second is when you can start considering to awaken stuff, but third is when you really can.
You can awaken stuff with one.
Yeah, but I mean the more useful
really
ones,
doing things
because you need 50 breaths for a lot of the a lot of
object
minor stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's aura, perfect pitch, perfect color recognition, and then it goes from there.
Okay.
And 600 for third.
But yeah, I don't think there's really a lower threshold for awakening. It's just being effective at it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. It's...
All right, Jordan. Oh.
Oh no! It's just interesting with Vivenna, just because of her special circumstances. You just wonder what because we've seen her manipulate now her eye color in Roshar, and so you wonder how much she can actually do.
Yeah, and on the copper mine, when I looked it up, I looked Vivenna up. It's said that like she was adding scars and other things, but I don't remember that specifically.
I wonder if that has to do with, because that's one thing that Returned can do, is they can alter their appearance, and it's sort of the way that they start to appear the way that they believe they should, and then Vasher is able to completely change it and suppress. So that may be something that she learned from him. It has to do with like basically linking the physical and the cognitive. By you take what you think should be, and you make what you want it to be, and
kind of force it into existence.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like it ties into making two separate identities for yourself, kind of, and then just
at a certain point, it starts to sound more like what Shy does when she stamps herself.
Well, and I think they actually work similarly. It's just with a Returned, you yourself are very greatly invested anyway, and since Vivenna has a boatload of breasts probably at this point, because she's so invested, she's able to manipulate it directly that same way. All right, Jordan, do you want to start us off on the next one?
This one's from Ross P. Had a fun train of thoughts about soul stamps and identity metal mines and wanted to share. First, I thought about soul stamping and identity metal mind in general, which of course would be difficult because it's an invested object. This is true. But this is normal as far as people's comments. We sort of then well, let's just say you have enough investiture to do this stuff. And so
a lot of speculative.
And but would you be able to alter someone who had their identity stored in their metal mind? Which just got me thinking about identity. Metal minds in general. With a metric crapload of breath, could you awaken a dead person's identity metal mind, or a living person's for that matter? Are there going to be transhumanist aluminum fairings later on? First of all, I want to say I don't think you can have an unkeyed aluminum mind. I think that's the one thing you can't have unkeyed.
Well, because to unkey something, you have to be actively storing identity, at which point you don't have anything additional to store. Because you're storing it in the metal mind, which means you can't store it in another metal mind.
That said, I think Ross is hitting on something that's very true here. While you're pouring yourself into an aluminum metal mind, you could be soul stamped much easier than you would normally.
Yeah.
Because you would lack that identity.
I would bet that too, because it's not there's no dissonance. Now, the minute you stop tapping, you might just immediately revert back.
Well, but there is a question of what would happen if you did that. You stopped tapping, but at the same time, you sort of overwritten yourself. Can you pull back in that identity because you've just changed your identity?
Yeah.
Are you still keyed enough to be able to pull it back?
You've become a corrupted hard drive.
Exactly. That's sort of what I'm thinking.
I almost wonder if you'd end up with some serious mental issues. I mean, because maybe you could still pull it in, but would you end up multiple identities or bipolar, but with identities? I guess it's the same.
This was my thought.
Sure.
Was, let's say you are an identity metal fairing, but you want to be something else. And you, what you might be able to do, let's just use gold, for example, because we saw an example of Wayne using an unkeyed gold metal mind to heal himself because it was unkeyed, and he was still keyed to be able to tap that. He could still tap this unkeyed gold metal mind without any sort of intermedium. Would you be able to say soul stamp yourself? Because if you're an aluminum fairing, it's not that big a stretch to say there's some history where instead you were a speed fairing or something like that. Could you get soul stamped enough to where it's plausible enough you could start tapping an unkeyed speed or steel mind?
I'll bet that could work. Doc FG does raise a good point. He says if someone doesn't have an identity, you'd actually run into the same problem that Shy had, harder, because you have to build from scratch. I don't know about that, because Shy wasn't building from scratch, because what was the Emperor's name?
Oh, goodness.
No, not
Gauton is the guy
Yeah,
who was
that's what I'm trying
the
to
helper,
think.
but I can't remember what the Emperor's...
It's
It's the Emperor.
It's about
He's
him.
just
The whole book's about
Emperor.
him, but we don't remember his name.
Vargo.
I think it was.
Oh, goodness.
I'm pretty
No, that's
sure,
Taravangian.
I
That's
think it was
Taravangian.
Palpatine. Yeah, it was definitely Palpatine.
Okay.
I'm gonna look
but
this
anyway,
up.
The Emperor, though, he wasn't a blank slate. Because what she was trying to do was tap into the soul that was still there. His mind had been destroyed, but he was still alive. He was still invested. He still had his quote unquote, for lack of a better term, in universe. It was still there, and she was basically trying to connect the body and the soul.
It's Ashravan is his name.
Ashravan. I kept thinking Taravangian, and it's just like no.
Shorter, less teeth.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was.
So I don't know that it would necessarily be harder because she wasn't working with a blank slate. She was trying to figure out the connections between something that was somehow still there.
And she
At
was
least-
testing on Gauton to make sure that her guesses were working because he was related in a lot of
They had a lot
He had a
in
lot of
common.
similarities.
So the other question he asks, if you could awaken an identity metal mind, this is what I find very interesting, because when you pour your identity into something, that you put it into aluminum, so you couldn't really awaken. Like the odds of awakening an aluminum metal mind, I think there aren't enough breaths in the universe to do that. Now that said, let's take a copper mind that has stored a crap load of someone's memories. If you awaken a copper mind, have you just invented something akin to a computer? It has all the data.
Or would you
It
be making something more like Nightblood?
Well, that's the thing, is you would be taking something that on some level has memories stored up. The problem with Nightblood is Nightblood has no general concept of what's going on, because he was just sword that they awakened. But a copper mind would have memories that it could sort of tap into. Now, I don't know if this would work, but if you poured enough breath into it, I wonder if it would have enough of identity at that point to where whoever made the copper mind couldn't take it back anymore, because now the copper mind is sort of... But once again, it's sort of corrupted in the sense that it
creates an identity.
It makes me wonder. Like, I still haven't finished all the Stephen Leeds books, but I'm wondering if it almost would be something like that, where
So good.
I've read the first one. I need to read the second and third, but where it's the multiple personalities, but they're totally different people from what I
Right.
remember. So I'm almost wondering if it'd be like that, where you could, if you were able to tap into it and awaken it, you could.
If it was
Take on
anything
those.
other than aluminum, I feel like you might be able to brute force your way into it. But because it's aluminum, with enough investiture, you could just sort of beat down the locks, because it's and break through the keys. They talk about that with the lifeless on Nalthis. Is that you can break the command the command
Keys with enough time, enough power.
Exactly.
The other thing
but because it's aluminum, I don't know that would be possible, because it's just
It brings up the weirdness of aluminum being useful in a magic system at all, because aluminum is supposed to be inert in an investiture way, and it's what gets to the heart of how does the actual burning and storing of stuff go. You're not actually storing it in the metal mind. What you're actually doing is you're sort of storing it somewhere spiritually, and the metal is sort of the key, and you have to have, it's sort of the lock, and you have to have the key in your genetic makeup to activate the power, because the power isn't coming from the metal, it's coming from wherever the stuff is actually stored somewhere in the spiritual realm. And so, I think my headphones just died. Vamp.
Oh, I can't.
Oh no, it's
no,
Bill.
don't.
Bill's...
Okay. I was like, don't tell me this happened 2 weeks in a row.
darn cough button that gets stuck.
Okay,
I hit
further
the
than I
mute,
thought it
I
was
hit the
me.
mute button.
Oh, it's so scary.
No, but...
Sorry, Bill, what were you trying to say?
I was saying I can't remember if it's in the cognitive realm or the spiritual realm that it's actually stored. I think it might just be speculation. To me, it would make sense that it's the spiritual realm, just because the spiritual realm is everywhere.
And I think it's probably a mixture of both, because you probably need the physical object, the cognitive idea of what the object is, tied to the spiritual realm of where the object is.
Yeah. So one of the other questions that he has in here, or is it he or she? I don't.
Ross probably.
Yeah, that Ross has in here. He says, "What happens to identity metal minds on the owner's death anyway? Since identity is probably part of their cognitive or spiritual web, could you have aluminum metal mind Horcruxes to keep your mind identity alive after death?" You know what this reminds me of? Have you ever seen Dollhouse?
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what this really
You
would
might
be.
want to explain it.
Okay. So if you've ever heard of there's a show called Dollhouse. It lasted like 2 seasons. It was
by Joss Whedon.
It was Joss Whedon's next step after Firefly. And the concept of it was there was a place where people, they'd get in trouble or they'd get paid a whole lot of money to go work for the Dollhouse. Essentially what they did is they had their entire mind wiped and stored on a hard drive. And then there was a guy who would create new personas for them. And people would hire the dolls. Like they would hire out a person to do different things. Like one would be like, I just want to see my wife again. And
and he did it every year in the episode. And there's like also, I want to have a date with a pretty girl, or I want someone to go hiking with me, or just like random things.
Yeah, and so, or for example, there were times where like they needed a hostage negotiator.
They needed that too.
So they create a brilliant hostage negotiator, or they need some sort of martial artist, and all of these things are imprinted into their brain, including like muscle memory and all that kind of stuff. Just the neurological impulses are there,
and they make sure that their bodies are good too.
And then they come back, their minds are wiped, and then they're stored in sort of this blank state. And they're exercised and they're taken care of and they're fed, but they're basically these blank husks walking around. And then after a certain amount of time, after their contracted amount of time, they are given their original personalities back and sent out into the wild.
With no memory of being in the dollhouse.
Exactly. And it's just...
But with like with the second season, there's like an apocalypse stuff that happens.
We don't need to give spoilers. No. I'm just explaining the concept.
I didn't mean to spoil it if you haven't seen it.
But anyway,
I'm a terrible person.
So, but yeah, so that when he's talking about these identity metal mind quote Horcruxes, that's the thing that came to mind, because if you want your personality to live on forever, you just have it. Now again, because nobody else can tap your metal minds, I don't know that it would quite work that way, but just the concept that he was discussing.
Yeah, it'd have to be like identical twins or your children or something to even get close to it, and even then I still don't think it'd be quite enough.
Yeah. Now, unless you're I wonder if you're stamped properly.
Ooh.
Like if maybe you could tap somebody else's metal
if it was
minds.
someone with a really similar background and really similar,
like a sibling
or
something like that,
then it could maybe still do it then.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
That's
either.
An interesting concept.
My question is, does anything decay while it's inside the metal mind? Like if it's left alone long enough?
I think so.
I know when Sazed was taking stuff in and out, it would decay then.
But it decayed between, like it was decaying when it was in his head.
Yeah, because
and then he stores it and it does it. Yeah, because
it was
it decayed naturally when he had it in his head, and then he put it back in, and it was stored.
The way memory naturally does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, because he asked the question, what happens to it when they die? Because they have connection to this. It's like, I think once you store it into the metal, you've sort of separated it from yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's gone. Like, and so if someone is unkeyed, because the whole idea is like, take something like like the Bands of Mourning, actually. You know, how much power was stored in that? That wasn't just one person storing. That was probably hundreds of people storing all their abilities for a very long time. Yet, it was still able to completely be used by
Marasi.
Yeah, Marasi, yeah. And
Wax.
Yeah, and Wax without any problem. So I don't think it leaves if the person dies, because it's unlikely that the people who stored that were alive when Bands of Mourning were used.
Yeah, they were probably gone.
But yeah, it's an interesting question, and I actually, like, he taps on something that I do think that eventually we will hit. I think we will see awakened metal minds at some point.
It's gonna be crazy.
It feels like the logical extension of the research that they've done with Nightblood and whatever it is that that Vivina has.
Yeah.
I just had a thought. So Nightblood is made of steel, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So if Sazed were to store speed in Nightblood, or any keeper, you know,
I don't think. I wonder if you could, because
I don't know.
I wonder
because,
if him having an identity would sort of make it bounce off,
and being so heavily invested as well.
Yeah.
It's just an
We've never seen them try to store in anything that's invested.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless it's been invested by them.
Yeah.
Can two people store into the same metal mind?
I don't know. I would assume that it's probably unkeyed, definitely.
Well, no, but into the same keyed metal mind, like
because
like
could open. Let me see.
Could, like, you know, one Feruchemist store speed into it, and then another Feruchemist store speed. Each of them can only tap the speed that they stored,
or would
is
they
it
be able
just?
to tap both? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I
hadn't really thought about that.
My gut would say that you can't store into the same metal without it being unkeyed, just because I think at that point the object is associated with that person.
Yeah.
I
would think.
know,
I'm
because
trying to find it, though.
Like there actually is a concept that somebody talked about where, like, if you stored in a metal and then you created an alloy out of it, you wouldn't be able to tap it, but it would still be stored there. And
but you'd have to make it
there's so many.
I found a line here in the Feruchemy copper mine. A hemalurgic spike can be used as a ferrochemical metal mine, much like how multiple Feruchemists can store in the same piece of metal.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure, though.
I need to find where that is. That's interesting. I bet whoever asked that question.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This one comes from TJ. He says, aluminum foil mystery / theory for your possible consideration. How does Urithiru work? I like this question. I think he's got some interesting.
That's just a little question, isn't it?
Interesting thoughts. He says, I suspect this will be answered for us either at the beginning of book 4, i.e., they figured it out during the time jump and now it's chugging along, or at the climax as part of the Sanderlanche. The time for speculation about this may be drawing to a close. My theory is that the column of gemstones was actually the previous location of Honor's perpendicularity. An epigraph, I believe Yasna's notes from Way of Kings, mentioned they decided to not build in Alethela, but closest to Honor. At some point, Dalinar realizes that he can unity clap the gem column back to life, and ka-ching. Anyway, love your work. Keep up the great podcasting. I like this idea. Because Honor's perpendicularity, cool. The setting, like how it's working now, is very strange. So, like, if that was Honor's perpendicularity before Honor was killed,
it would make a lot of sense.
It would make a lot of sense.
Well, and the fact that column could be lowered, that's an interesting feature. Why would you need to do that? Well, what if that was a way to, like, not... What if it wasn't just the fact it's close to Honor? It's if we dip this in there, we can refuse these gems. And they've created a way to not need a storm to power the gemstones.
Well, which makes sense because it's hidden behind, you know, the mountains, and so it doesn't get a lot of hit by a lot of storms itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it was just I think TJ here just has a lot of good ideas here.
I think he's hit on something here.
It'd be fun if he got it right.
Well, and then
Some
the other
major
thing I
props
really
there.
like about it is you say like, okay, clear. I don't think like I think where Honor's perpendicularity was originally a fixed location because we haven't seen anyone else's be mobile except for Honor's post his shattering, or splintering, I should say.
Right.
But the thing that would make sense was we know Urithiru is a Fabrial in some way, shape, or form. If the entire city's a Fabrial, you would need a massive investment of Stormlight. So you would need to build near where you could get Stormlight at all times to keep it running. So if that column is, for all intents and purposes, your reactor for whatever's powering things, you would need some way to constantly replenish it. And that would be a way to do it if his theory's correct.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I love him just bringing up that quote, and it's like closest to Honor.
Yeah, it makes.
And so does it go back down underneath the floor and then raise back up? Is that what it does? Right.
I'd have to go and reread it.
I'm imagining it like a giant dipstick.
Yeah, because like and Doc FG is asking, like where's the pool? Like where was the pool? And if it was that I can't remember, right? It's been too long. If it goes down, I wonder if the pool was underneath the floor,
right,
to some depth, and they would just like dip it in, recharge, and then.
But then
raise it up and use it.
When Honor was splintered, something happened, and like this, when he put stuff into the Stormfather and all that stuff, it just sort of,
the pool dried up or got split or something, or
Well, and if
Roshar's very broken.
Well, but the fact that we know they abandoned Urithiru, which is curious because it's an unassailable location. It's so important, but at the same time, if they have set up an entire civilization built around, we need to be able to have this pool of power in order to set up the city, and suddenly that's gone. The reason Urithiru sort of works right now is because society has moved past this. What would have at that point been a crutch that they didn't, because they thought honor is, we can build it over honor. What better thing to build it over than, a god?
Right.
But, as soon as a god starts getting splintered, things sort of break.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, like the shard pool, it may have been a matter because, for example, the Well of Ascension is also a shard pool. It's empty until it gradually starts filling. So it may be something like that. So, one of the people in chat mentions that there are still shard pools on Elantris. But I think that in this instance, it may have been a matter of something like, let's release the power in the Well of Ascension. And it gets caught up in the storm and just keeps going and going and going that way. So we end up with these storms that just cross the continent at a regular rate.
Yeah.
Or if the Spren are
and Doc
and so it won't necessarily
or something maybe.
Yeah. I think Doc makes a good point where he says splintering doesn't destroy the pool in Elantris, but at the same time, Elantris is a very different process because Odium pushed the power into the cognitive realm because he was trying to make it so no one else could take up the power again. And we know from Words of Brandon that the basic Odium didn't quite get what he was looking for when he splintered Dominion and Devotion. He
didn't like the results.
He's still sort of experimenting with things. By the time he splinters Honor, he's already taken out Ulida, he's already taken out Devotion and Dominion, and he's probably a little bit better at this than before. We know Honor's perpendicularity moves in some way, although we're not quite sure the mechanics of that.
Right. And so I think he may be right, though, is that Honor's perpendicularity used to be beneath Urithiru. I like this theory. I'm really... Gosh, guys, I want book 4 so bad.
Well, I got good news for you. All you have to do is wait. It just takes time.
That's the hard part.
Oh.
Oh man, no, I really, really like this idea. All right, which of y'all wants to take this next one? This is a big one. This is a meaty one.
Do you want this one, Jordan? Or you want me to take it?
I'll grab it.
So the next two came from a single email, but I split them up into two because each of them is kind of chunky. Yeah.
So the first one, it's talking about the fourth ideal, the Windrunners, and I really like this because I actually basically have had the same idea as him. So I was thinking about the Unmade and how humans were once all under Odium's domain/power before traveling to Roshar. So humanity is made up of Odium, and the Unmade keep saying how they were made and then unmade. Excuse me. What if they are a piece that is removed when Odium and his followers broke one of the heralds to be let out as a desolation? Then they gained their power as a force, an Unmade. That way, when they say the number isn't 10 because back then only 9 had broken, all but Talonel, I haven't really tried to put them one to one of the heralds, but I have an idea as who might be what. And he gives the example of Ishar and Nergaul, since he's a warmonger now and was the great diplomat/bondsmith leader. Nergaul isn't fully awakened/mindful because Ishar kept some of his wits. Conversely, the more awoke Unmade resemble the ones that lost their minds going crazy/broken by Odium's forces.
So I like this. I don't know if this is the way it is, but I really like the thought process that he went through.
It fits nicely.
It's one of the reasons I like this, and originally I sort of had a similar idea, but I had never quite refined it down to trying to figure out a one-to-one relationship. Mm-hmm. But it does explain why is it 9 instead of 10. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they say we were made then unmade, and my thought had always been they were a promise that had been made and then unmade, and people had been and it's because the thing is well, Talonel has broken now as well. Wouldn't that mean there's a 10th unmade now? And could be, but my thought is more, it's more the repetition of breaking the oaths. And they talked about how all of them except for Talonel had broken at some point, and how there were mere months between desolations by the end. And I'm thinking it was basically as people broke more and more, that gave Odium more to work with. And so I don't know if it's how much they're there personally, like he does with Ishar and Nergaul. My thought would be number of times broken gives the Unmade more power.
So each time you break, it grows stronger.
So it's almost like kind of comparing like strengths and characters, or just like saying that a herald was 100% of a something, and then they broke and they lose 10% and get 10% of an unmade, and they break and they get 20% of an unmade, and then it just kind of that way maybe.
Yeah, that's sort of
not balancing it.
Yeah, something
although
like
not
that.
quite
but
so exact, but
yeah, probably not quite that precise.
And it probably it's probably way more complicated than that as far as a theory goes. But I like it because it makes a lot of sense, and it would mean that at this moment there's a 10th unmade. But
it's
would
probably in
be
the
way mindless at this point. But at the same time, it would feel very Brandon to, for them to have at some point get all the unmade and then find out. But wait, there's more.
There's the other one.
Here's another thought though. Maybe it's just based on the degree to which they're broken, and because Taln held out for so long by himself, we've seen him, he's utterly shattered.
Yeah.
Because of that, though, maybe it means suddenly there's a 10th, and it's terrifying.
It could be. The other thing
it could go either way.
Doc brings us up. We now have Vyre's knife that somehow killed, what's his name?
Jezrien.
Yes.
And so if you follow this theory of what an unmade is, and they, stabbed it and took whatever, it seems like it took the bond itself, that because there was a ripping that they all felt, and the bond is what the
Oath Pact.
Yeah, the Oath Pact is what that what did it. My wonder is if they can sort of use, like, this is how they're trying to literally break the Oath Pact. And the reason the Unmade are so powerful is because they represent the breaking of bonds, whereas the Heralds represented the making. The making.
Huh. I don't know. It's yeah. I'm really interested in learning more about the Unmade. They're creepy as all get out in all the best ways.
I think I'm gonna have to keep notes or something because I can't ever keep them straight.
This is actually, I'm going to start doing the Stormlight reread. For those who don't know what's going on over in the Stormlight subreddit. Erevar, friend of the show, they're doing a reread. Basically, you work your way through all the first 3 books in Edge Dancer in time for the glory that is going to be Rhythm of War.
Yeah, and they've got it sort of timed out to the release. So, Aravar, just as a reminder, is the host of the World Hopper's Guide to the Cosmere. Great podcast. Y'all should definitely check it out. So, but yeah, that'll be some really interesting discussions over there on Reddit.
I'll have to go look. I haven't done that yet.
All right, yeah. Amy, do you want to take the next one?
Okay, this one is...
Are we done with this topic, or do we want to...
I think we kind of covered it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is, both of these, the previous one and this one, are from Howard B. And it's, so in part 3 of Oathbringer, he's thinking it's one of the gemstone quotes, refers to windrunners and foreshadows the difficulty of the 4th ideal. And here's the quote. My friend claims that recording this will be good for me, so here I go. Everyone says I will swear the 4th ideal soon, and in doing so earn my armor. I simply don't think that I can. Am I not supposed to want to help people? And then they continue. I am pretty sure it is before, when Kaladin is thinking on the ship and Windspren are visible in Shadesmar. That I guess that Kaladin's close to his 4th ideal. And I think it has more to deal with both of your ideas of forgiving yourself and not trying to save everyone. So I think it'll be more like, quote, I will forgive myself for the ones I have failed and cannot save to focus on the ones I can, end quote. Also, Kaladin says to Elokar, and I think might be a chapter title, focus on the ones you can save. Those are his 2 cents. So
the one you can save is the name of a chapter, is one of the chapter titles.
Okay. I think I do remember that vaguely, yeah.
So, but yeah, there's so much speculation right now going on about the 4th ideal of the Windrunners. And I'd forgotten that it actually says specifically with the 4th ideal, the Windrunners will gain their armor.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that too. There's so many little things. These books
just because,
heavy.
I mean, and it's easy to come to that conclusion just based on what was going on with Kaladin when he almost said something and couldn't, and just based on the things on how that works. Of course, it's different for each of the orders, but I'd forgotten that there's an actual statement that says, with the 4th ideal, I will earn my armor.
Yeah.
But yeah. Because my thought was, I will accept the people I cannot protect, or something,
and forgive myself for it, or something like that. Yeah.
I still think the 4th ideal, like across the first 3 ideals, all sort of build upon each other. The first ideal is the same for everyone. The second ideal is sort of the very basics of your. I will creed.
Protect those who cannot. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the third tends to be something that's sort of the next step beyond that, where you have to understand a little bit of nuance.
Well, like,
that one's different between Teft and Kaladin, right?
Slightly.
The third,
only slightly. Like, I think part of it is just the oath, the words themselves. While they're important, the meaning behind them is what's more important. Because, they both say, I will protect even those I hate. That's the one. And Teft's extended into, even if the one I hate is myself.
It's myself, yeah.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, that's still a very natural outgrowth of the first, where you stop protecting just those you already love. I think the 4th ideals for these orders are going to start to be where the nuance comes in, and this is why the orders bicker and argue is because the more you progress in your ideals, the less cut and dry they actually are.
He froze.
Because you start to see the exceptions to the rule. And Kaladin's seeing the exceptions. And so, what I think the oath is going to be is, I think, because the problem is Kaladin has always said to his father, and it's like, what about those who kill to protect? And his father tells him, no, that's not a thing. And I think that's actually, Kaladin, I think, has always known this ideal to be true. And I think I think the oath is going to be, I will learn to accept that some people are beyond saving, or something like that. Because
I think that might be number 5.
It's going to be, like, I think it's 4 or 5, because I think it's when he actually finally clashes with Moash. Because it's going to
I was
kill,
gonna say that would.
It's going to kill him to fight Moash, because he wants to save everyone. This is his friend, but he's also his enemy. Like, it's all his ideals crashing together. And I think it's going to be him realizing some people I can't.
You just gotta take him down.
Like, there's some people I can't physically rescue, and I have to be willing, in order to protect some people, I will have to kill those I love sometimes.
Or
something along the lines of, there are people who do not want to be protected or saved, or who do not want to be saved.
It also makes me think of, like, I can't remember the quotes from, but like the kill the one to save the many, or something.
The needs of the many, or the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few
one.
or the one.
Something to
Star
that
Trek.
effect. Like
Star Trek.
Is it Star Trek? Okay.
Yeah,
that's Wrath of Khan.
Okay.
The other thing it could be is something more along the lines of, because Kaladin wants to save everyone, obviously. It could also be something along the lines of, I need, I'm trying to think how to word this. It's, in order to save some, I have to harm others, or
yeah.
It's just, But I think no matter what, I think the 4th and 5th ideals for the orders are going to be them starting to accept the nuance of what it is that their ideals actually are. Because the problem is they have these virtues, right? But just in general, every virtue taken to its extreme becomes a vice.
Yeah.
And so if you're too focused on, well, I got to save everyone, well, you can't. That's not realistic. That's not reality. And
there's going to be conflicts that you can't take both sides on.
Doc FG raises an interesting point in chat. He says, I think the 5th ideal will be, I will save those who are unsavable by keeping them from harming others. That's an interesting thought. I don't know how I feel about it, but I'll have to think about that a bit more before I...
Well, and I think there's some precedent for this sort of thought process of how the ideals go, because we actually know all 5 ideals of the Skybreakers, because they very Skybreaker-like. They lay out the rules, and it's your job to figure out how to go through them. Because first they're going to put the first one, then the second one they're going to put the law, like they find something that they're going to follow, or like the law, seek justice. It's always worded somewhat differently.
Yep.
And then the third one is you pick a thing to be your guidepost. And so for Seth, it was Dalinar Kholin. But the 4th ideal is a crusade.
Yeah.
And so it's no longer I'm following, it's now I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then the 5th one is where you become the law, in which case you're just Batman and you're in full vigilante mode. But that's a really hard... But for a order that's all about order and following a fixed point, becoming the law itself, runs contrary to the other ideals they swear. And so I think this is why when we get to the 4th and 5th ideals, it's going to be the exceptions to the rules, to understanding the nuance of what it is you're actually swearing.
Right.
Which is why so few people get to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ideals, is nuance is really difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the last one. This one comes from Hilly and Likely, who, if you have seen the picture of our
Cosmere
little
puppy.
eldritch
Of
puppy,
Nightblood. Yeah,
or
Nightblood puppy.
of the eldritch puppy, the imagination of what Nightblood looks like, what his spirit looks like, and we looked like some sort of Cthulhu puppy thing. So Hillian likely wrote in and said, and I like this when he starts off, he says, "Okay, fellow Cosmere nuts, strap on your aluminum hats and hold fast. This mink hole is a deep one." We now know that there have been several migrations of sentient species to Roshar. Humans are the most prominent, having fled from their ruined homeworld of Ashen thousands of years in the past. But there have been others, the Amiens, for example. What if we haven't seen the last of them, however? I take you to Oathbringer Interlude I-1. Here we follow Pu'uli, the keeper of a lighthouse in Natin on the eastern coast of Roshar. He is excited by the new, backwards-blowing storm because he views it as the beginning of the fulfillment of his grandfather's prophecy. They'll come with light in their pockets, Grandfather had said. They'll come to destroy, but you should watch for them anyway, because they'll come from the origin. The sailor's lost on an infinite sea. You keep that fire light at night, Pu'uli. You burn it bright until the day they come. Notice, they come from the origin and are lost on an infinite sea. I believe this might mean Ashen, the origin of humanity in the Rosharan system. Could the infinite sea refer to interplanetary space? The original magic of the Ashenites allowed them to levitate entire cities. Could they build spacecraft to flee the destruction of their planet? Most Ashenites migrated through the cognitive realm, but could some have decided to try a different way? Are they still coming with their disease-based magic? What is the light in their pockets?
Let's get got in its pockets.
Before I thought the light in their pockets was supposed to be just like stormlight being used by the Knights Radiant. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I didn't remember the origin connection in the Infinite Sea.
The other thought I have is with the light in their pockets, it reminds me so much of the girl who looked up. Because what did she find on the other side of the wall? She found the light of God. And so, she comes back from the other side of the wall. Maybe the wall is the storm wall.
Could be.
Sorry. My brain just started going off on a complete tangent. I'm just like, what if the wall that she scaled is the storm wall and she went east to the other side of the wall? I don't know. Anyway, that's not the question, though.
I like Hillian's theory here, mostly because it comes into my favorite interlude retroactively, which is Pu'uli's one, just because I'm convinced this interlude is going to turn out to be one of the most important ones.
Oh, it's going to be very important.
But because it's so weird, we have no clue what they're talking about. So I do think that I like the reading of that coming from the origin, and it could instead we think of origin as where the storms come from, but this could mean a different origin of humanity. I actually, upon reading this, come to a different conclusion though, but this is because I've always been bothered by Pu'uli's name. That looks very Elantrian to me. That looks like an Elantrian name to me. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear they'll come from the origin, I'm personally hearing they'll come from Elantris. Because the
origin of their magic.
And so, and then this is the reason that I find it interesting, is because it's lost on an infinite sea. And so we know that traveling through the cognitive realm is very difficult for Elantrians because of how chaotic.
At least coming from Cell.
Yeah, and so lost on an infinite sea. Part of me wonder, and this is because there's nowhere close to enough evidence. It's very tinfoil hatty, but he tells us to strap them on, so I'm going to. Mm-hmm. Lost on an infinite sea. I could see an entire society of Elantrians that tried to leave Elantris via the cognitive realm and got lost in this storm that is the cognitive realm there.
That is the door.
They're lost on an infinite sea. And what it could be is this prophecy relates back to the original Elantrians that I believe Pu'uli comes from, because that name just looks too Elantrian to me. It just doesn't look anything close to something from Roshar. And so that's my theory, is that it has something to do with that. The light in their pockets could have something to do with the silver light that we see the Elantrians and the Airi drink. And so I don't. Which Silverlight's its own thing. I know it's a thing in books that I haven't read.
You're talking
yet.
about the connection juice.
Yeah, whatever the connection juice is.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's Silverlight.
No,
like Silverlight's the name of a city.
Silver Light,
okay,
like
because I
literally.
think there's actually been talk of Silverlight other than being the name of the city being another substance as well.
Yeah, and so it might not be that. It's silvery light, and so I just call it that.
Okay.
And then I
well,
realize
it's just you got to be careful when we're talking about the cognitive realm. So.
And so
the only other thing I can think of is Scadrials or Scadrians from Era 3 or 4. Or probably 4.
Here's my other thought. Because he's... Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
That was all. Okay. I hadn't gotten any further than that. But
I wanted to make sure that wasn't... Yeah.
No, you're fine.
My other thought is talking about sailors on an infinite sea and using it as interstellar space travel. My brain immediately goes to Six of the Dusk. With the ones beyond.
Isn't that too far ahead in this timeline, though?
It is far ahead in the timeline, but that just means that stuff has happened by the time Six of the Dusk comes along.
So basically, you're saying this prophecy might not be something that's even meant for this set of books.
Well, either that or what's happening here is a precursor for the stuff that's going on by the time we get to Six of the Dusk. So he's talking about people coming here. Well, all sorts of... There's a reason... Brandon has said that he isn't going into any sorts of details on Mistborn Era 4 because there's a whole lot of stuff going on with just the whole culture of the Cosmere at this point. And I feel like what Pooley's seeing could be some sort of instigating event in what leads to said culture.
Yeah. But as for Hilliard Likely's theory that it's floating
Ashen?
cities of Ashen that become basically, battle cruisers from StarCraft. I like the theory. I really do. And
it's fun.
There's a ton of fun stuff in here. And I never thought to not think of the origin as the origin on Roshar, where the storm comes from. But once you start expanding that out, there's some interesting possibilities that you come up with. I really like what Hillian has here.
Well, I mean, if we want to go even farther back, maybe it's from Yolen.
And if this is from Yolen, who knows what light in their pockets mean at that point.
Yeah, who knows?
They have light weavers.
They do.
So
the only other thing that came to mind was when he was talking about the migration of sentient species, and I know it's not actually the case, but part of me thought it would be fun if it was the Rosharan, or no, what are they called? The horses. Roshadium, yes. If they had come from somewhere else, I don't think that's actually the case. But
it's already been
was
confirmed
a
that
fun thought.
Roshadium just came with humans to
and then
Roshar and then evolved.
I know, but it was cool in my head to think of space horses.
You just want Beta Ray Bill to show up, don't you? You want sentient horse people.
Just space horses, yeah. But, so, yeah, regarding Hillian Likely's theory, I like it. I cannot confirm it, but I cannot refute it. So it definitely bears consideration.
Anything involving Ashen definitely intrigues me because of the fact that, A, they have a disease-based magic, which is just the most Brandon thing I've ever heard, where...
Well, and the other thing is that Ashen is in the Rosharan system.
Yeah. And so if you wanted to do space travel...
If they're going to travel from anywhere through space... That's the best bet, at least this early on.
Well, it's doable in the same way that we can consider going to Mars. It would take, a couple of years to get there, but we can consider it. Whereas interstellar space travel isn't considerable for any of the other systems until you start doing whatever hacks Brandon has in mind with Farukami and time bubbles and things that break physics in ways that just make me cry. But
yep. Once we hit, Allomantic FTL or Allomantic metal arts FTL.
Once we get Allomantic Fabrials, it's going to be an issue. Well, 'cause that is the logical next step. We know harmonium can be used to transfer an allomantic or ferrochemical ability into the metal itself. It's how they prime the ships and stuff like that.
Right.
So if you can do that, in theory, you can do other things. Now, awaken other crap with breaths to where you can have some sort of, investiture computer that can calculate things. You do hacks with time bubbles that make space around you go weird. It's stuff that suddenly you're just like, oh, this really has a lot of weird applications that I don't understand, but I do sort of like lick my lips in anticipation.
Yeah, just like suddenly a hungry dog just licks his chops, just like, oh wow. Okay, so that's a Pavlovian bell, and I'm salivating.
I'm hungry.
But yeah, I also am really excited for when we get the Silverlight novella, because Silverlight is the city in the cognitive realm where the university is, and all people are crossing over and all sorts of stuff. And I'm just like, this is where we're going to start getting some really cool interactions.
Oh, every little line is going to matter.
Plus, Chris helped found the college in Silverlight, and I like Chris. So
yes.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we have this time, but dude, there were some really good meaty ones in there. I like that.
Oh yeah.
This was a cool discussion. Guys, keep sending those in, and I'm actually hoping to start reading reading emails more often on the show rather than just saving them up and hitting don't get me wrong, I loved this big episode, but I do want to read more emails as part of the show as we move forward. So keep sending in theories, thoughts, questions, ideas, feedback. And honestly, about anything, just let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. Now, of course, thanks to our patrons, we are able to continue holding our monthly giveaways. All of our giveaways are open to everyone, and they are free to enter. And for this giveaway, since we've talked a little bit about everything, we are giving away a paperback copy of Arcanum Unbounded.
Also known as the Sanderson grab bag.
So this is, for those of you who aren't aware, I assume if you've listened this far into the episode you are, but just in case, Arcanum Unbounded is a collection of all the short, in quotation marks, fiction
short.
that Brandon has written, wow, in the Cosmere.
What was your degree in?
English.
Engle-talking.
Oh.
So this has all the short stuff. Basically, anything that you can't find by itself is in here, and then a few things that you can find by itself. So you've got stuff like Mistborn's Secret History, you've got The Emperor's Soul, you've got Edge Dancer, you've got and there's even some fun little side things as well. But yeah, so I think
Allomancer Jack.
Allomancer Jack, which is a delightful little romp part of a serial in the broadsheets. It's just lots of fun.
I need to reread that one.
And you learn some interesting thing about the Koloss and stuff like that too, which is kind of neat. Special thanks, of course, to Brandon Sanderson's online store at store.brandonsanderson.com for sending us so many awesome goodies to share with our listeners. Because you know what? I think it's all pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's not the coolest thing in there, but it's definitely really cool.
But it's like everything. It's got stuff from every planet except for Nalthus.
I don't know what to tell you, Bill. But this bag goes to 11.
Huh. Wow. Well, we'll have to figure out what the coolest thing in here is at some point.
At some point.
Anyway.
Someday.
We do love hearing from our listeners, so keep sending in questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere or drop us your idea for topics that you would like us to discuss during the show. While you're at it, we'd love to hear your feedback about how you think we're doing, as well as any interesting theories you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere. You can send all questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and we could read it as part of the show. Of course, we've each got our own personal projects that we work on outside of the show. Yes, we do have our own lives, but we love the show anyway, and we love y'all. But Jordan, where can we find you when you're not sitting in your chair recording for All About Brandon Sanderson?
Well, you can find me on twitch.tv/splice where I'll be instead on a treadmill and pontificating on Amiibo or playing XCOM usually. I want to thank everyone again who followed me on YouTube. So now we actually have YouTube/SpliceStream as a thing instead of the word and letter soup that was the old URL.
Very nice.
And we are about to, on this Friday, so by the time you guys get this podcast form, you don't have much time. The deadline for the Professional Amiibo League is Friday. Get your submissions in because the prize pool is now up to $250, and there are 5 Troph-Meebos up for grabs as well. These are Amiibos.
Troph-Meebos?
Yes, these are Amiibos that I have spray painted in various colors, and they are trophies. Thus, the portmanteau that is just very clever and not at all just weird and doesn't work in any way. Troph-Meebo.
Wow. A me-troph? No. Amy, what about you? Where can we find you outside of the podcast?
So I do lots of stuff. I'm on Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my website, where I sell stuff, is www.coincidencecosplay.com. So recently I've been working on the mist cloaks that I promised you guys, and I had to order more fabric because I can not math correctly. But I have everything cut out for mine. I have most of the stuff cut out for your guys's, and then I realized I didn't have lining, so I had to buy lining. And then on Friday, I think it was Friday night, I was kneeling over my coffee table and foolishly cut most of the strips for my mist cloak, and then the next morning I threw out my back, which was fun. So I had a couple days of not fun, and I still have a heat pad on my back right now because I have a muscle in the middle that's like, you moved, I'm going to hurt. It's great. So yay.
Remember when we were young college students?
I know, I miss those
We're
days.
not anymore.
So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exercise,
I'm young forever.
Exercise, people, and don't do stupid positioning when you're cutting out fabric for 2.5 hours. It's not pleasant. Don't do it.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing. That and playing Super Smash Brothers with my children and realizing they're really not that good at it.
No, it turns.
Super
You know
rusty.
what? I've been shocked. Children are surprisingly not coordinated or smart.
Except for those scary ones who are able to just wipe the walls with you and stuff.
Yeah,
like
so,
that.
You mean
so
the
give
government
them a year or
experiments?
two. Yeah, so I don't know. No, they haven't played too many video games, so we will wisen them up, but they're not great right now. It's pretty painful.
Just get them to play Kirby. Be Down is amazing.
Oh, I hate Kirby. I'm so terrible at Kirby. I'm a Bowser and Marth and a few other people, but Bowser is my friend. I love Bowser.
Nice. And as for myself, when I'm not here, I do have a bunch of board game reviews over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. I post about board games on social media, so check those out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All of those are at Innkeeper's Table. Guys, I've been playing Legacy Betrayal, as in a legacy version of Betrayal at House on the Hill. This game is so ridiculously fun. I'm not going to spoil because there's a plot and there's all sorts of stuff that happens that you do not expect.
Can I tell them what I walked in on, though?
What? I attack the...
Yeah, I walk upstairs and I hear... I don't know if it was Bill or someone else. They're just like, all right, I'm going to go attack the armoire. And I'm just like, what happened?
I attacked the armoire.
Yeah, to which I'm like, it sounds like the horror movie version of Beauty and the Beast. And he's like, it's called Be Our Guest, actually.
Oh, man.
Anyway, but yeah, so that's a thing that happens at some point, or could happen based on how things go. So it's so much fun and ridiculous and wonderful. And I'm trying to figure out how to do a good review on it because I haven't been taking pictures, and so as things change, I don't know. But
You just set them up again.
Yeah, I think this will be fewer pictures than usual, but I am definitely planning on writing a good review of this one because it's pretty awesome. For those of you who do want to support the show but cannot become patrons just yet for whatever reason, we would love it if you'd head over to Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you listen to our podcast and give us a review. And like especially a written out review where you tell us what you like, what you don't like. We'd love to see it. So
specifically, we did this a while ago. I want to offer another review challenge. Try to do a review where you shoehorn as many of the names of shards into the review as possible.
Okay, so stuff like honor and not stuff like Tanavast and
yes, no, because that's not
stuff
called
like
at that point. That's not shoehorning.
Like
that's just taking a sledgehammer.
That's abusing them into place. But yeah, so we would love it if you drop a review for us over there. Any final thoughts on any of the topics we've talked about tonight?
We need more Ashenite battle cruisers to be operational.
This fully functional,
Fully
disease
functional.
I'm just worried about
city.
the Amy and Zerg rushing at some point, so
Oh my
I
god.
need battle cruisers.
Kremlin
Although that would
rush.
actually be
Kremlin
horrible
rush.
for a Zerg rush, so don't focus on that.
Anyway, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also find us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. For our next episode, Amy is going to finish up the discussion of romantic relationships in the Cosmere, and Roshar specifically. It is Valentine's season after all. So if you want to join in on the discussion live, head over to twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table on February 24th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember,
There's
There's always
another
another
secret.
secret.